wife and me? No, she's not in one of them. And we, just some teeny bit of background, we moved to Charlottesville in July 2015. My sort of home place was Foster, Rhode Island. Foster is a town out on the Connecticut border. It's mostly woods, but there were 2 mills there that the Yankees built mills on very small streams. And that particular mill made shoelaces up until 1953. This is a story about Ralph. Ralph was born, I mean, I don't know where he was born, but he should have been born in Foster directly, because he was Foster. The other thing about Foster, besides Ralph, is US Route 6 goes right through the middle of it. US Route 6 is there. It's a 2-lane road. It is the longest US highway in the nation. It runs, where is it, 3,689 miles across the country. It moses across the country. I've gone on parts of it on a motor scooter west of here, and it just weaves all through Pennsylvania. You keep coming across it, and it's in the weirdest places. That's how they got all those miles, because that was their goal, was to build the longest road in America, and they succeeded. A lot of traffic in Foster, a hill of cars and trucks, big 16-wheelers, which I guess was all you had then, would roll through. The occasion was the funeral for the death of Ralph. He was 73, and he had died 2 days before the funeral. He was one of the old-timers. He was born in Foster. He traveled Route 6 often to sell eggs in Providence, and more recently, to help his neighbors by driving them to hospitals and doctors when they needed you, when they needed a kind and unpretentious act. When Ralph talked with you, which he loved to do, he would describe something, he would tell a story, there would be a pause, and then he would say, anyway. At his funeral, there was an undercurrent about Ralph and Foster that I wasn't enough of an insider to really understand or learn what it was about. I was getting closer and closer to that kind of knowledge about Foster, but I didn't quite get there on that one. So I don't know what it was about, but it kept sort of peeking out in the funeral service, and particularly in the memoriam by Bob Cooper, who was the minister, that it was some dissent about if Ralph was really good or really pretty bad. Where was he going? Up or down? Bob handled this very well, and it was partly because he really believed it. He was a good friend of Ralph's, in fact. And he first started by saying, we should rejoice in that Ralph was Ralph, even though now he was dead. Bob said nobody really knew anything about the hereafter. But if he found out that God thought Ralph should go to hell, he himself would take God on. Bob was not only Ralph's minister, he was also his friend. The day of the funeral was March 12th, and it was in that season in New England when the snow is melting, it's dark, the day is very bright like this one, but there's dirty snow and banks of ice still around the edges of the highway, but you knew spring was coming. After the service, I went out with the the chapel was full, at least 150. It was a small chapel, almost a little bigger than this room. And I overheard the usher say, "What do we do when we run out of standing room?" But they didn't. And the crowd came out, and we walked down a street right toward Route 6, which was like 2 blocks away. And suddenly, when we got there, we realized that the cars and trucks coming down the hill had to stop. They just stopped. There's a volunteer fireman who was one of Ralph's best friends stopping the traffic on Route 6 so that we and the hearse with Ralph's body could get across Route 6 to the cemetery on the other side. The people who stopped were, you could see sort of questioning looks. I mean, here they were out in the country, going fast on this highway, and they were stopped. In addition, Foster's 7 volunteer fire trucks and 2 ambulances lined the highway on both sides with all their lights flashing. So the traffic had to flow through the corridor of the 2 lights. They had to wait. And in their waiting, they did honor, without even knowing it, to Ralph Pierce. Anyway. The second story is here. It was July 4th, 2015. We had just moved in about 2 weeks before. Our son and his daughter, Kylie, was helping us unopen boxes. Kylie was very interested in being there because we had promised we would go to the fireworks. Les and I had no idea where they even were. So we began scouting around most on the internet, and McIntyre Park seemed to be the place. Kylie then, and so I came in and announced that, and Kylie said, "When?" I didn't know. So I went back and got the city's website, and I said, "Oh my gosh." It said, "The fireworks will start a minute after dark." How could you not love a town that can say the fireworks will start a minute after dark? It made me think of Peter Pan's directions to when he was asked, I think by Tinkerbell, how to get to Never Never Land. And he said, "You go out straight out to that star and turn right until morning." My wife thought about her son Mark, who when he was 4, was very anxious. He had a friend with them, and he was very anxious to go on a trip. And Les was doing other things, getting ready and not getting ready, but she wasn't quite ready to go. And Mark, of course, kept coming and saying, "When?" And she said, "In a while." And then Mark went with his friend to Les to say, "When do we go?" And Leslie said, "In a while." Mark turned to his friend and said, "My mother says we will go in a few whiles." That's that.